What you consistently focus on becomes the lens through which you experience life. Your attention is not neutral. It actively shapes your perception, your emotions, and your decisions. When your focus is scattered, your progress becomes fragmented. When your focus is intentional, your actions align with purpose. Direction is never accidental. It is the result of repeated attention applied to specific thoughts, behaviors, and priorities over time. Most people believe their circumstances determine their outcomes, but in reality, their focus determines how they respond to circumstances. Two people can face the same challenge and move in completely different directions based on what they choose to concentrate on. One fixates on obstacles and limitations, while the other searches for lessons and leverage. The difference in their results is not intelligence or luck, but focus. Your mind follows what you feed it. If your attention is dominated by fear, comparison, or regret, your direction will naturally lean toward hesitation and self-doubt. If your focus is anchored in growth, responsibility, and execution, your direction shifts toward confidence and forward movement. Focus acts like a steering wheel. It doesn't change the road, but it determines where you go on it. Distractions are not harmless interruptions. They are silent redirectors of your life. Every moment spent focusing on things outside your control pulls you further from the life you want to build. The more attention you give to noise, the less clarity you have for strategy. Direction becomes unclear, not because the path is hidden, but because focus is divided. What you focus on repeatedly becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar feels normal. This is how people normalize stress, dissatisfaction, and stagnation without realizing it. By focusing daily on what drains them, they unknowingly train themselves to move toward environments and outcomes that reinforce that same drain. Direction becomes predictable when focus remains unexamined. When focus is deliberate, it creates momentum. Small, consistent attention toward improvement compounds into noticeable progress. You don't need to see the entire journey to change direction. You only need to focus on the next disciplined action. Over time, those focused actions form patterns, and patterns create a clear trajectory forward. Focus also determines what you ignore, and that is just as powerful as what you pursue. Every meaningful direction requires the discipline to say no to competing demands. Without focus, priorities blur, and effort gets diluted. With focus, energy is conserved and applied where it produces the highest return. Your environment responds to your focus. People, opportunities, and ideas align with what you consistently pay attention to. When your focus is on growth, you begin to notice resources and connections that were always present but previously invisible. Direction shifts not because the world changed, but because your awareness did. Emotional focus shapes behavioral direction. Dwelling on frustration leads to reactive decisions, while focusing on solutions leads to strategic movement. You cannot move forward while mentally rehearsing the past. Direction demands that focus be placed on what can be built, not what has already been lost. Over time, focus becomes identity. What you think about daily becomes what you believe about yourself. Those beliefs then guide your actions without conscious effort. Direction becomes automatic, driven by internal programming shaped through repeated focus rather than deliberate choice. The greatest leverage you have is not force, speed, or talent, but attention. When focus is disciplined, direction becomes inevitable. Every meaningful change in life begins the moment attention is redirected from distraction to intention, from reaction to responsibility, from survival to deliberate movement. Energy is a currency. Expand it, and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. Energy is not unlimited, and it is never neutral. Every thought you think, every emotion you entertain, and every action you take requires an expenditure of energy. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are always spending from this internal account. Some investments multiply your capacity while others quietly drain it. The quality of your life is directly connected to how wisely you manage this invisible currency. Most people go into emotional debt without realizing it. They overspend their energy on worry, resentment, and mental arguments that produce no return. These expenditures feel justified in the moment, but over time they leave the mind exhausted and the body unmotivated. When energy is constantly spent on low-value activities, there is little left for growth, creativity, and execution. Just like money, energy follows attention. What you focus on demands payment. When you give prolonged attention to negativity, you are funding it with your vitality. When you focus on discipline and improvement, you are investing energy into systems that strengthen you. The difference between feeling empowered and feeling depleted often comes down to where your energy has been allocated. Not all energy expenses are equal. Some activities cost energy up front but produce long-term returns, while others feel easy in the moment but compound into fatigue and frustration. Learning, building, and exercising require effort, yet they increase capacity over time. Complaining, scrolling, and reacting emotionally feel effortless but reduce your available energy with every repetition. Your emotional state is one of the largest energy expenditures you make each day. Holding on to anger, jealousy, or regret keeps your system in a constant state of internal resistance. That resistance consumes energy that could be used to create solutions or take action. Releasing emotional baggage is not about denial. It is about reclaiming power that has been misallocated. Energy must also be protected, not just spent wisely. Every interaction, commitment, and environment either replenishes or withdraws from your reserves. Saying yes to everything guarantees depletion. Boundaries are not selfish. They are financial decisions regarding your most valuable asset. Protecting your energy is an act of long-term self-respect. When energy is invested consistently in one direction, momentum forms. Momentum reduces the cost of future actions, making progress feel more natural. This is why focused individuals appear disciplined and confident. They are operating from accumulated energy rather than constant effort. Wise energy management creates flow instead of force. Many people wait for motivation before acting, not realizing that action itself generates energy. The currency grows when it is circulated intentionally. Strategic movement, even when imperfect, increases confidence and clarity. Stagnation, on the other hand, freezes energy and allows doubt to consume it. Your habits reveal where your energy is truly going. Daily routines are automatic spending plans that determine whether you are building reserves or living paycheck to paycheck. When habits align with your long-term goals, energy compounds quietly in T background. When habits are misaligned, exhaustion becomes the norm. Mastering life is less about acquiring more resources and more about managing the energy you already have. When energy is treated as a currency, decisions become clearer and priorities sharpen. The moment you take responsibility for how you spend your energy, you begin operating from abundance instead of depletion. Self-mastery beats external validation. Expand it and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. Self-mastery begins the moment you stop outsourcing your worth to other people's opinions. When validation becomes external, control over your confidence is handed to circumstances you cannot manage. Approval is unstable, inconsistent, and often conditional. Building your identity on it guarantees emotional volatility. Self-mastery restores authority by anchoring confidence in discipline, values, and personal standards. External validation creates dependency. When praise is present, motivation rises. When it disappears, momentum collapses. This pattern traps people in cycles of seeking attention instead of pursuing excellence. Self-mastery breaks that cycle by shifting the source of motivation inward. Progress becomes consistent because it no longer depends on recognition, applause, or agreement. The need for validation often disguises itself as ambition, but it is rooted in insecurity. It pushes people to perform rather than develop, to appear successful rather than become capable. Self-mastery redirects effort towards skill building and character formation. Growth becomes private before it ever becomes visible, and strength is formed when no one is watching. Emotional regulation is a core element of self-mastery. When reactions are governed by how others respond, emotions fluctuate uncontrollably. Criticism feels like an attack, and silence feels like rejection. Self-mastery allows feedback without collapse and silence without self-doubt. It creates emotional stability that is not easily shaken by external noise. Self-mastery also sharpens decision-making. When validation is the goal, choices are filtered through popularity and acceptance. When mastery is the goal, choices are filtered through alignment and long-term impact. This shift produces fewer impulsive decisions and more strategic movement, even when the path is uncomfortable or misunderstood. Discipline is where self-mastery proves itself. Doing what must be done regardless of mood separates internally driven individuals from those who rely on encouragement. External validation may spark temporary action, but discipline sustains progress. Mastery grows through repetition, structure, and commitment to standards that do not change based on public response. As self-mastery strengthens, comparison loses its grip. Measuring yourself against others becomes irrelevant when progress is measured against personal benchmarks. This reduces envy and distraction while increasing clarity and focus. Energy that was once spent monitoring others is redirected toward refining execution and improving capacity. True confidence is a byproduct of self-mastery, not affirmation. It comes from knowing you can trust yourself to follow through. Each promise kept to yourself reinforces self-belief. Over time, this internal trust becomes more valuable than any external praise because it is earned through action, not granted through opinion. Self-mastery demands solitude and reflection. It requires the courage to confront weaknesses without defensiveness and to correct patterns without blame. External validation avoids this work by offering temporary reassurance. Mastery embraces discomfort because it understands that growth is found on the other side of honest self-assessment. When self-mastery replaces the need for validation, freedom follows. Decisions are made with clarity, effort is applied with purpose, and progress becomes inevitable. The individual no longer waits to be seen, approved, or celebrated because internal alignment has already established direction and strength. Distractions drain momentum, expand it, and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. Distractions rarely announce themselves as obstacles. They appear harmless, familiar, and often justified. Yet every distraction interrupts flow and fractures progress. Momentum depends on continuity, and anything that repeatedly pulls attention away weakens that continuity. Over time, these small interruptions accumulate into significant delays, making forward movement feel heavier than it needs to be. Momentum is built through sustained focus on a single direction. Distractions scatter that focus across too many inputs, preventing depth of thought and consistent action. When attention is constantly redirected, the mind never fully engages with the task at hand. Progress slows not because of lack of effort, but because effort is divided. Many distractions are emotionally driven. Worry about outcomes, fixation on other people's opinions, or replaying past mistakes pulls mental energy away from execution. These internal distractions are often more damaging than external ones because they travel with you. Even in quiet environments, an unfocused mind cannot build momentum. Technology amplifies distraction by offering constant stimulation without effort. Notifications, messages, and endless content compete for attention throughout the day. Each interruption resets focus and requires time to re-engage. The cost is not just lost minutes, but lost rhythm, which is essential for meaningful progress. Distractions also create the illusion of productivity. Staying busy feels like movement, but movement without direction produces no momentum. Switching tasks repeatedly can feel efficient while yielding minimal results. True momentum requires finishing, not just starting, and distractions prevent completion. When distractions dominate, urgency replaces importance. Immediate stimuli override long-term priorities. This causes reactive behavior instead of intentional action. Momentum fades because energy is spent responding rather than building. The day becomes controlled by interruptions instead of strategy. Mental clutter increases when distractions are unchecked. The mind becomes overloaded with incomplete thoughts and unresolved tasks. This creates internal resistance that slows decision-making and execution. Momentum thrives in simplicity, not chaos. Distractions weaken discipline by training the brain to avoid discomfort. The moment focus becomes challenging, attention escapes to something easier. Over time, this erodes the ability to stay with difficult tasks long enough to produce results. Momentum cannot survive without tolerance for sustained effort. Focused individuals are not immune to distractions. They are selective about what they allow access. They recognize that saying yes to interruptions is saying no to progress. By minimizing distractions, they preserve the conditions necessary. Clarity creates power, expand it. And don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. Clarity removes friction from decision making. When you know exactly what you want and why it matters, hesitation loses its grip. Confusion drains energy because every choice feels heavy and uncertain. Clarity simplifies action by narrowing attention to what is essential, allowing effort to move in a single focused direction rather than being scattered. Across possibilities. Power is not created by doing more, but by doing what matters with precision. Clarity sharpens priorities and exposes distractions for what they are. When goals are vague, action becomes inconsistent. When goals are clear, behavior aligns naturally. The mind stops negotiating with itself and begins executing with confidence. Without clarity, motivation fluctuates. People feel inspired one moment and stuck the next because their direction is unstable. Clarity anchors motivation by providing a fixed reference point. Even on difficult days, progress continues because the destination is certain. Power emerges from this consistency, not from emotional highs. Clarity strengthens boundaries. When you understand your purpose, it becomes easier to say no to demands that do not align. This protection of time and energy increases effectiveness. Power grows as fewer resources are wasted on obligations that dilute focus and slow momentum. Fear often thrives in ambiguity. The unknown magnifies doubt and exaggerates risk. Clarity reduces fear by turning uncertainty into defined steps. When the path is visible, even if challenging, courage increases. Action becomes possible because the mind understands what is required next. Clarity also improves communication with yourself and others. Expectations become realistic and effort becomes intentional. Misalignment decreases when instructions are internalized clearly. Power is amplified when thoughts, words, and actions reinforce the same direction. When clarity is present, self-doubt weakens. Doubt feeds on indecision and lack of definition. Clear standards and goals provide a measuring stick for progress. Instead of questioning worth or ability, attention shifts to execution and refinement. Clarity transforms obstacles into information rather than threats. Challenges are no longer personal attacks, but signal, indicating where adjustment is needed. This perspective preserves momentum and emotional stability. Power is sustained because resistance is met with strategy instead of frustration. As clarity deepens, confidence becomes grounded. It no longer depends on external reassurance, but on internal alignment. Knowing what you stand for and where you are going creates quiet certainty. This certainty influences posture, speech, and decision-making. Clarity creates leverage. With a defined direction, small actions produce larger results because they are connected to a cohesive plan. Effort compounds rather than dissipates. Power grows not through force, but through alignment between intention and execution. Focused action builds destiny. Expand it and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. Focused action transforms intention into reality. Ideas alone hold no power until they are acted upon with consistency and direction. When action is scattered, results are unpredictable. When action is focused, progress becomes measurable. Destiny is not shaped by what is imagined, but by what is repeatedly done with purpose. Every focused action reinforces a pattern. Patterns become habits, and habits quietly design the future. Small, intentional steps taken daily may feel insignificant in the moment, yet they accumulate into meaningful change. Focus ensures that each action moves in the same direction instead of canceling out previous effort. Focused action eliminates hesitation. When attention is locked onto execution, there is no space for overthinking. Momentum builds as decisions are made quickly and adjusted along the way. Destiny favors those who move, not those who wait for perfect conditions. Consistency gives focused action its power. Acting with intensity once creates excitement, but acting with focus over time creates transformation. Repetition strengthens skill and sharpens judgment. Each disciplined action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Focused action also builds resilience. When setbacks occur, clarity of purpose prevents quitting. Instead of reacting emotionally, focused individuals evaluate, adjust, and continue. Destiny is shaped not by the absence of failure, but by the refusal to stop moving forward. Attention determines the quality of action. When the mind is present, effort is deliberate and effective. Distracted action wastes time and produces minimal impact. Focus allows energy to be applied where it creates maximum return, accelerating long-term outcomes. Focused action creates credibility with yourself. Each completed task reinforces self-trust. Confidence grows through evidence, not affirmation. Destiny becomes believable when progress is visible through consistent execution. Time responds differently to focused action. Progress that once seemed slow begins to accelerate as systems form and efficiency improves. Focus reduces friction and shortens the distance between effort and result. Momentum compounds naturally when direction remains stable. Focused action requires sacrifice. Choosing one path means ignoring others. This discipline narrows options but expands impact. Destiny is built through commitment, not convenience. In the end, destiny is not discovered, it is constructed. Each focused decision, each intentional effort, and each disciplined response contributes to the direction life takes. The future is shaped by what you repeatedly act on, not what you occasionally desire.